a special episode about the UN Security Council session on Syria, and today we will say what hasn't been said. Greetings to everyone in a new episode of Syrian News Panorama. On June 22nd, 2026, the Security Council held an open morning briefing session on Syria, followed by closed consultations on the political and humanitarian tracks concerning Syrian affairs. In this special session, media representatives or civil society organizations are not allowed to attend, as it is only for governments. In the open session, Claudio Cordon, Deputy Special Envoy to Syria, and the Acting Assistant Secretary General from the Office for Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, spoke, indicating that the session was dedicated to the political and humanitarian files. This is not necessarily a voting or decision-making session, but rather a regular briefing and closed consultations, so we do not automatically expect a new resolution. However, the session is important as it signals the direction of member states' positions regarding the current Syrian government, the political transition file, the humanitarian situation, sanctions, refugee return, security, and Israeli/border violations if raised. Notably, the June agenda places Syria under Paul and Hum, meaning the Security Council still treats Syria as an open political and humanitarian file, not as a closed file after political change. This means the UN continues to monitor the legitimacy of the transitional phase, the inclusiveness of the political process, the detainees and missing persons file, the return of displaced persons and refugees, aid, and the country's recovery. The main topics discussed by the UN envoys regarding Syria included the elections for the People's Assembly, the legislative body in Syria, which took place on May 24th in areas formerly under Kurdish control in Hasakah province and the Ain al-Arab region, also known as Kobani. These elections filled 11 seats that remained vacant after the September 2025 elections, as voting did not occur then in the northeast, which was under the actual control of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, and the Democratic Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria, DAANES. Cordon also noted that the representatives for the remaining 70 seats, who will be directly appointed by Sharah, have not yet been announced, nor has the date for the Council's first session. This complicates the existence of an effective legislative body to advance transitional processes, such as transitional justice. Representatives of the countries that signed the Joint Commitments on Women, Peace and Security, WPS, Colombia, Denmark, France, Greece, Latvia, Liberia, Panama, and the United Kingdom, also highlighted the need for full, equal, and effective participation of women in the political process. They pointed out that filling the remaining council seats, including those to be directly appointed by the head of the Transitional Authority, Ahmed Sharah, is an important opportunity for the Syrian government to enhance women's involvement and achieve diversity in the political transition process. Some speakers also referred to the latest annual reports of the Secretary General on Conflict-Related Sexual Violence, CRSV, and on Children and Armed Conflict, CAAC, dated April 21st and June 16th, respectively. Both reports cover developments in 2025 and document violations committed by government forces against the Alawite and Druze communities, with a clear warning about the decline in educational conditions and recent exams that many citizens in Swaida were unable to attend. Additionally, Cordone briefed council members on details of his recent visit to Syria last month, during which he met with ministers, civil society representatives, groups representing victims, and representatives of the Transitional Justice File. He noted that his discussions with Syrian authorities focused on moving the Special Envoy's office from Geneva to Damascus, and on areas where the UN could provide assistance to support the transitional authorities. Council members were also informed about updates on the integration of the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, and the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria, DAANES, into state institutions in line with the agreement signed on January 29th between these forces and Damascus, including the gradual integration of armed forces. Reports indicate that several brigades of the SDF have been fully integrated into the national army structure, while more than 9,000 members of the Asayish, Kurdish internal security and police forces, are undergoing integration into the Syrian Ministry of Interior. There was also mention of the recent release of more than 1,200 SDF detainees by the government, according to the agreement. However, several unresolved issues remain, including the integration of women's units, civil governance matters such as educational curricula, strengthening unity across Syria, and respecting the rights of all components of Syrian society, alongside the improvement in security and the restoration of territorial unity in northeast Syria since the beginning of the year. There was discussion about concerns regarding the situation in southern Syria, where Damascus still faces significant challenges to its sovereignty. On June 15th, following the announcement of a memorandum of understanding dated June 14th to consolidate the ceasefire between Iran and the United States. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that Israeli forces would remain in Lebanese and Syrian territories, where Israel occupies sites it describes as security zones. According to media reports, Israel has imposed actual control over an area inside Syria spanning 235 square kilometers, exceeding the ceasefire line and the buffer zone established under the 1974 disengagement agreement between the two countries. The latest quarterly report of the Secretary General on the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force, UNDOF, dated June 2nd and covering the period from February 14th to May 14th, confirmed ongoing violations of the 1974 agreement that the force was tasked to monitor. The report noted that the period was marked by the presence and activities of Israeli defense forces, both inside the separation area, the demilitarized buffer zone established by the agreement between the two countries, and outside it. The report also stated that Israeli forces maintained 11 positions that they had established and reinforced on the Syrian side, in both the separation area and the limitation area, a separate area where military presence is subject to specific restrictions. Regarding the issue of terrorism, it was noted that the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, ISIS, carried out 2 attacks this week. The first, on June 15th, targeted an internal security facility in Raqqa, resulting in the death of a security officer and injuries to others. The second, on June 16th, caused serious injuries to a judicial official in the Damascus countryside. At the same time, reports indicated that Syrian security officials are conducting large-scale counterterrorism operations across the country, including a 3-month campaign from March to May that led to the arrest of 235 ISIS members and the seizure of weapons and explosives. Everyone emphasized the need to improve capacity-building efforts in this area, including by member states and United Nations bodies such as the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, UNOCT, and the Counterterrorism Committee, Executive Directorate, CTED. Many members may also encourage Syrian authorities to strengthen their efforts to combat foreign terrorist fighters. In this regard, some speakers highlighted the United Nations Counterterrorism Week, scheduled for 2026, which will include a side event on June 26th on Syria's approach to combating ISIS, ISIL, an event co-organized by the Permanent Mission of Syria, the European Union, the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, UNOCT, and the Analytical Support and Sanctions Monitoring Team supporting the Security Council Committee concerning ISIS and Al-Qaeda, resolutions 1267, 1989, and 2253. Regarding the overall humanitarian situation in Syria, it was emphasized that the situation remains tragic despite recent positive developments. There is economic collapse, deterioration of civil infrastructure, and support systems. In this context, the Syria Humanitarian Fund has accelerated the allocation of $145.9 million in aid targeting 3.4 million people, 88% of whom are women and children. There is a need for additional funding for the United Nations 2026 Syria Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan, which requires $2.92 billion to support 8.6 million people, while only 20.9% of its funding has been secured so far. Usually, in open sessions, government statements are conciliatory or encouraging for stability. This was evident in most statements, despite the clear focus by the majority on the need to enhance participation, diversity, equality, support for development, and reforming the legal structure that promotes stability and recovery and strengthens trust, transparency, and political democracy. For example, Denmark focused on the support provided to Syria and the situation of women. China welcomed the American-Iranian settlement through the Pakistani mediator, emphasizing support for stability throughout the Middle East, including Syria, where terrorist groups are still active. Latvia focused on supporting reconstruction and the need to promote diversity. There was also emphasis on the Kurds and their cultural and social rights. Greece focused on the necessity of supporting stability in the Mediterranean, disarmament of chemical weapons, and building trust in Syrian society. It also pointed to the killing of more than 1,300 people in the Soweda region as an example that should be avoided in the future to support stability. Greece also noted that more than 6 million people are in need of humanitarian and educational support. Pakistan emphasized the need for stability to support reconstruction and the importance of transitional justice, as well as challenges in the southern Syrian Golan. France focused on discussions between Israel and Syria, the agreement between the Syrian Democratic Forces and the interim government, and France's support for the health sector. Britain emphasized the importance of stability in Syria after the Iranian-American agreement and the need to support education, giving examples from the situation in Idlib and Aleppo. Colombia focused on the situation of refugees, the humanitarian crisis, and the need for gender equality. The Syrian delegate clarified the humanitarian situation, giving an example of the violations suffered by the family of Rania Abbasi. He also explained that his government supports Lebanon and justice for all neighboring countries of Syria, through joining the Committee to Combat Human Trafficking and commitment to child rights. He also emphasized the need to extend Syrian sovereignty over all recently seized territories. He provided a figure regarding 6,000 detainees from the previous regime within the transitional justice program adopted by the interim government. He also referred to the adoption of Decree Number 13 concerning the naturalization of stateless persons and Kurdish foreigners. He announced the return of 3.5 million refugees and explained that the government is fighting ISIS and the Captagon file, hinting at the need for broader international support. Saudi Arabia focused on economic transformation in Syria and the need to remove Syria from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. It also stressed the importance of supporting host countries for Syrian refugees and the need to return to the disengagement agreement between Syria and Israel. Turkey focused on reconstruction projects, including energy projects, and the challenges Syria faces under the current economic situation. The United Arab Emirates focused on the need for stability, trade, health, and tourism, which are areas the Emirati government has sought to support in Syria through organizing an economic forum in Damascus, creating a flight route between the two countries, and restoring the Umayyad Mosque. The statements of some other countries intersected with the general line of the aforementioned statements. However, in general, it can be said that most countries support stability in Syria and see it as an extension of the calm associated with the agreement between Iran and the United States. These countries also call for continued international support for Syria, highlighting the need to enhance societal stability through supporting education, ensuring genuine societal representation in Syrian decision-making circles, and removing obstacles to economic investment in the country. This was a general summary of the open session on Syria in the Security Council. I hope I have succeeded in summarizing the most important points raised in this session.